Hi, my name is Elise. I am a butcher here in Edmonton and I teach at a cookery school downtown called Get Cooking. And I'm going to share a recipe with you for making a really delicious tomato and maple glaze. This glaze is perfect on beef, chicken, pork. It's really good on vegetables as well. In fact, there's nothing it isn't good on the barbecue. And it's just a few simple ingredients, and then you're going to have this really delicious sauce that's going to kind of elevate anything you cook. First of all, we've just got a pan here, and I'm just going to use some really nice olive oil, and I'm going to add that to the pan. I have some chopped shallots that I am just going to soften a little bit in the oil. So it's really, you have to be really careful with shallots that they don't burn. So you're going to keep them on a medium heat. I'm going to add a little bit of salt into the pan, which helps bring out the moisture in those onions and kind of gets them sweating down rather than burning in the pan. And then we're just going to saute those down a touch. Now, it's really important to be careful when you're adding garlic into a recipe. A lot of recipes tell you to add the garlic at the same time as the onions, and actually garlic burns pretty quick, so I would never add it at the same time as the onions for risk that you would burn that garlic, and then you kind of get that acidic kind of taste in there that isn't particularly very nice. So you want to add the garlic as close to adding another ingredient over the top, something that's going to be like liquid that's going to stop the garlic from cooking too much in the oil. So once these have softened down a little bit, we're going to add we've got 2 cloves of garlic here, and I've just chopped them, I peeled them and chopped them finely. So this glaze, I'm actually going to make it into a smooth glaze with the stick blender. So it doesn't matter if you've kind of got some big bits of garlic in there, that's totally fine. So once they have softened down a little bit, we're going to add the garlic cloves in. And then pretty much straight after, we're going to add in some tomatoes. Now, I'm using tinned tomatoes, actually. Now, you could totally use fresh tomatoes if you have some delicious fresh tomatoes. These are an heirloom variety of tomatoes that are grown in Canada, and they're really delicious. So much flavor in there. And they're actually the whole tomatoes. They're whole and peeled, and they just give a really good flavor. Okay, and then into there, I'm going to add some picked thyme leaves is going to go into there. Okay, and then I'm going to add some soy sauce. Soy sauce, it just adds kind of like that richness and that depth of that saltiness and flavor, which I really like in barbecue. So we're going to add a little bit of soy sauce. And then we're going to add some maple syrup. So we're not going to add too much maple syrup. I don't want it to be kind of like teeth-itchingly sweet. I just want it to be really well balanced with the acidity of those tomatoes. You could totally use honey as well. There's some fabulous honey producers here in Edmonton. So yeah, feel free to use that. Maple syrup just kind of gives you that extra smokiness as well. So adding that in. And then we're just going to allow that to simmer and reduce down for 5 to 10 minutes to let everything kind of soften and bubble together. And then I'm just going to blitz it in. You could use a food processor or you could use a stick blender. I always use a stick blender because I always think it's less washing up, but it's probably totally not less washing up at all. And then, yeah, like I said, this is an incredibly good it's like a good glaze. I wouldn't necessarily use it as a marinade. You've got a lot of maple syrup in there, and you don't want to add sugary marinades to the barbecue straight away kind of thing. You'd have to kind of like get as much of the marinade off if you were using this, but I would use this as a glaze. So if you get a good silicone brush like this, it's not going to melt on the barbecue, and you can kind of glaze this on midway through the cooking and kind of all the way to the end. It's going to help keep lots of flavor in there. It's going to help keep everything kind of moist so that it doesn't dry out on the barbecue. And then you can also drizzle some of the sauce over at the end kind of thing, just to give that extra sauciness if you need it as well. While that is simmering away, I'm actually going to use this on some chicken thighs. And I have 2 chicken thighs here. Now these ones actually have the bone in, so you can totally cook them with the bone in. If you want to kind of cook them a little bit faster, it's easy to take the bone out. And I'm just going to show you how we can tidy these ones up. Again, if you go to the butcher's, we will totally do this for you if you want. But if you want to kind of do some of these little tests at home, I know people kind of, some people like to do everything from start to finish by themselves. So I'm always keen to share a few tips on how people can do that. So you just want to make sure that you have a nice sharp knife, flip the chicken thigh upside down, and you can see the two ends of the bone here, and that is where we are going to start boning out. So I have my butcher's knife here. You can just use a sharp knife. You don't want something that's too long. And what you need to do is just use the very tip of the knife. Kind of don't go in there hacking away because you're just going to destroy this chicken thigh. But you just want to go in and kind of just use the very tip of the knife to go down either side of the bone, like this. And if you're unsure of where the bone is going next, don't stick your knife in and wiggle it around because you'll just do lots of damage in there. And every time you slash the meat, it's a point that it's going to dry out a little bit. So you want to kind of reduce the number of slashes in there. So just feel with your finger where the bone goes. So I can feel the bone kind of goes around here and down here. So I know where to put my knife next, and I know that I can go just around here and take the bone out as cleanly as possible. Now, you want to kind of just feel around as well to see if there's any other little bits of bone. There sometimes is when they're cut, so you can feel that there's nothing there. There's also a little bit of bone just down here, kind of a little bit of cartilage around the joint of the bone, so just going to take that out as well. Then you can, usually when these are cut, you kind of have a little bit of loose skin at this side. I would just trim that up there, and then yeah, there's a bit more bone in there. So just feel where the little bits of bone are that you can get them out. And then you want to just dry these out so that that skin goes nice and crispy. So we're going to season these up really well. The salt that goes on the outside of there kind of helps the moisture release from that skin and get you a nice crispy skin. Chicken thighs are the perfect thing to cook on the barbecue. Chicken breasts can dry out because there is no fat on the outside of them. Chicken thighs are a much more forgiving meat to cook. So if you are new to barbecuing or it kind of daunts you a little bit, just use cuts of meat that are going to allow for a bit of give on either side. So if you overcook these, they're not going to be ruined at all. And I always think I like the crispy skin as well on there. So yeah, it's kind of a win-win here. Okay, so we've just taken all those little bits off. Yeah, and just like I said, put them on some kitchen roll, kitchen paper, so that it just dries them out completely, and then they will cook up beautifully on the barbecue. And because we've kind of flattened them out, taking that bone out, you can see they're a nice even depth all the way through, so they will cook nice and evenly as well. Okay, so once the tomato and maple glaze has kind of reduced down, you can kind of see those tomatoes breaking down. It's thickened up a little bit. I've just transferred it into this big glass bowl, and I am just going to blitz it with my stick blender. You can totally do it in like a stand blender or whatever you use to kind of break it down. Okay. Also, taste for seasoning at this point. Add some seasoning. You should add salt until everything tastes fresh and kind of alive and bright. You shouldn't taste the salt itself. If you can taste salt, then you've probably gone a little bit too far. So just add salt until those tomatoes kind of feel like bursting of flavor in your mouth. If it kind of, anything that you are seasoning, if it feels a little bit flat, you can add just a squeeze of lemon into there, and it kind of adds a brightness to whatever it is you're making. This glaze here, we're just going to allow this to cool now a little bit, and then the chicken thighs that we boned out, I'm not going to add this onto here now. I'm just going to prepare these as I would if I was just plain barbecuing any meat or chicken on the barbecue. So I'm just going to use some really good olive oil. I'm just going to sprinkle the olive oil over the top, and then I'm going to use some kosher salt just to season generously the skin side, and then we can turn these over, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Just be careful when you're doing this, you don't get chicken on your fingers and then stick your fingers in your salt bowl, because that's not very good either. So there we go. And then that is going to be ready for the barbecue. Ideally, any meat that you're cooking on the barbecue, it shouldn't be fridge cold. I'm not saying leave the chicken out all day long. Please don't do that in the sunshine. But it shouldn't be completely fridge cold. 20 minutes just out kind of takes the edge off it. It's a bit like going outside with the wrong clothes on in winter kind of thing. You kind of tense everything up, and that's what your meat does. If you throw it straight from the fridge onto something really, really hot, that contrast kind of stiffens everything up and makes it really kind of tough. So just allow it just to sit out at room temperature. 20 minutes is absolutely fine. And you'll also find it will cook more evenly, because you haven't got like hot spots on the outside and really cold spots on the inside. So yeah, and then this is ready to throw onto the barbecue.